Hi, everyone. Today we're here with Mark Hines. And Mark Hines is the founder and CEO of Resonant Technologies Group. And he has long been known to be a supporter of scientists and inventors who have created technology based on new thinking in physics. And in a conversation we were having a couple weeks ago, he was telling me that technology is the only thing that's ever changed the world. And that was such an intriguing conversation. And I thought, let's talk about this and really flesh it out. So I invited Mark here today. So hi, Mark. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Beth, great to be here with you. Look forward to talking a bit about this.
Yeah, just maybe start just kind of dive in and tell us that you're thinking behind how technology's changed the world.
Sure, yeah. So, when we look back, I guess it depends on how far back we want to go, whether it's, to the understanding of the use of fire, or, the invention of the wheel, but something we can probably really understand the invention of the printing press.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say in modern history, really a couple the most important revolutions, which was the Industrial Revolution, where we stopped making things by hand and we'll be able to make things at mass scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then 40, 50 years ago, beginning with the revolution from analog to digital.
Yeah.
And of course, we can go on with many others, but it's really been clear that throughout history, that society shifted, society grew in correlation and relationship to really radical evolutions in technology.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we can say maybe over the last many years, maybe not all of these were so good, meaning maybe how they've been affecting the planet, how they've been used for purposes maybe not in the highest and best good of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But we can state that they have evolved humanity into different awarenesses and different levels of thinking. And so I think that we can quantitatively support that line of thinking. And then so the next revolution that's going to come is going to be the most significant that the planet has ever experienced. And it's a technological revolution, say, mostly, but it's also, a philosophical and really a spiritual revolution where we're evolving from developing technologies that are in dissonance to how nature functions to developing technologies that are in resonance with how nature functions.
Right. Yeah, maybe give some examples of dissonant technologies and some of the new resonant technologies that you see coming.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a few examples that I like to be able to point to, say, of dissonance, and actually there's an unlimited amount of them.
Yeah, no kidding.
But, so for instance, genetically modifying, whether it's organisms, plants, humans, biology. Nature does not genetically modify anything, does not forcefully modify genetics.
Mm-hmm.
It allows for a transition to occur for things to adapt to its environment properly.
Mm-hmm.
Or really what we do with energy, which is very violent. We blow up a hydrocarbon, or even worse, we violently split an atom. A fundamental structure of the entire universe, atoms, and we split them to boil a little water and get a little heat.
Yeah.
Or we use drugs and surgery and many things in health.
Yeah.
What was that?
Radiation therapy. Yeah.
Extraordinary poisons
Mm-hmm.
to quote unquote achieve health in humans.
Yeah.
And none of these things are resonant to how nature functions.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's obvious that just by observing nature for even a small amount of time, we can see that all systems are resonant. But that's not been what's happened so far, but it's coming.
Right. Yeah. And how I've heard you say, and I've definitely said that nature couples with the field, and that's how it's getting its energy and getting its information, and that's how the human body functions. How do you see technologies being modeled after nature?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, if we see examples of how everything couples, so first of all, so we're saying nature, then now let's extrapolate nature up into some sort of a definition, which we could then call the field.
Yeah.
And I've heard in some of the presentations that you've done and some others, the unified field.
Mhm.
And so this field, I think we can describe it as a field of energy and information that everything exists within. And so then we can state that this field, or AKA nature, uh, that we can say that we can observe that everything is coupling to this. So that an atom, the nucleus of the atom, which is spinning at near the speed of light forever. And of course, we all know there's a lot of energy stored in an atom when it's released.
Yeah.
Where does that energy come from?
Mhm.
And it's coming from this field. Or a really extraordinary example I've used before is a magnet. If I
Mhm.
take a magnet and I hold up a little piece of 8x10 artwork on my refrigerator for 10 years, if my arm had to do that and hold up that paper, that would be a lot of energy expended.
Yeah.
Well, that there's no answer in the current standard model of physics of really how a magnet produces more work than energy it consumes.
Right. I wrote about that in my book. I know. It's so
Uh,
crazy.
yes, and so and we can go on and on and on. The human body, 37 trillion cells, doing all this events,
Mhm.
producing all this energy, and it's unlimited.
Yeah.
And so very clear that that there's things, or pretty much everything, is coupling to this field. Now, what we're doing as humans so far is we're taking the result of that coupling and then sort of using that, or extrapolating a little bit of that at a very base level. And instead of doing that, why don't we just model the phenomena of coupling to this field and do what the atom does, do what the magnet does, do what the 37 trillion cells in the human body does, do what a rainforest does, do what all of these things do. So, to go long answer to your question, but what are examples of this? So a really great example is one of the companies in our portfolio called Upterra. And Upterra is an ag tech, agricultural technology company. And what they're doing is they're using electromagnetic signatures, uh, frequency, a little more complex in frequency, and then um, structural dynamics that we would find in nature, such as toroids and vortexes, to do very interesting things with water. And so from that, this company is getting plants and trees to realize a very significant reduction in water consumption,
Mhm.
to realize a significant increase in yield of the crops, to work towards a reduction or complete elimination of amendments in chemicals.
Mhm.
And so simply by developing a technology that models where nobody's out in a rainforest fertilizing it,
Yeah.
right? We're not dropping 200,000 ton of nitrogen in a rainforest.
Mhm.
So it's able to perpetuate its nutrient source. And so we're just modeling that. And so it's really doing fascinating things with food. The biochemical content is enhancing, the shelf life is increasing, um, yield is increasing, and going to have super organic food, genuinely organic food. So it's a really exciting uh, realization of what can happen by coupling to this field.
Yeah.
And we have a technology whereby we're looking at the electromagnetic signatures in the voice to create an analytic app, a machine learning analytic app, to be able to see what's happening in the human body simply by taking 30 seconds of the voice through a smartphone, sending that to a back-end algorithm, a machine learning algorithm, and then data can come back providing us extraordinary information and insight to what's happening with the human body. And
Yeah.
very soon, we're in dialogue right now with first two countries outside of the US to introduce this technology to be able to have it as a analytic tool for COVID.
I think it's really good to just back up for 1 second and just say to our audience that every single thing in nature, every molecule, every atom has an information signature that's unique. And actually, it is that information signature that determines what that atom is. So these are detectable in the human voice. And I think that the Chinese medical doctors have known this for centuries, actually. And voice diagnostics was part of a traditional Chinese medicine diagnosis where they'd feel the pulse, look at the tongue, and listen to the voice and get interesting information about what was going on in the human body. And now with the sonify technology, you're taking it just quantum leap up, and it, like, you can tell like what vitamins are missing in the body, or what toxins exist in the body, or even like if they've been exposed to mold, do they have mycotoxins? Do they have weakness in a particular organ, or have they been exposed to a pathogen? And then you've been able to characterize the information signature of the pathogen and the immune response to all of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to support what you're saying, that these corresponding or correlating electromagnetic signatures of substances, which for the last 13 years, we've been working to identify those. And it's the same concept that's working in the ag tech.
Yeah.
So if it needs a specific nutrient like nitrogen, so instead of using the physical chemical, we can use the electromagnetic signature. Or if it's something that we need to help to resolve a pest, to repel it instead of kill it, we can use sort of a repelling electromagnetic signature. And so, yeah, and so with the voice, we're able to now identify these electromagnetic signatures that correspond, as you said, to viruses, to organs, to disease states. So we're moving towards, some people, that the tricorder in Star Trek, they sort of ran it over the body, but this is the tricorder of today, whereby we will have a real-time analytic tool to be able to tell us everything that's going on. And it's coming to the world here in late 2022. One of our licensing partners has an app coming out to look at overall wellness. They can look at muscles, hydration, digestion, energy, sleep, and not just, oh, did you sleep well or not, but actually the biochemicals in the body that said, oh, here's why I didn't sleep, or here's what needs to be enhanced to allow me to sleep. So it's really going to be a quantum leap forward, not a true quantum leap, whereby we're now able to identify electromagnetic signatures of everything. I wish I had one of our products here. I'm looking around, I don't have one with me, but it's a patch that's been developed that's now in the market. One of our first licensing partners, you can go to them. It's Vibrance, vibrants.com, vibrance.com. And we've now been able to implant these electromagnetic signatures into this patch. Because, is it okay if I go into a little bit of the physics?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so to backtrack a little bit of why this works. So at the subatomic level, no atom has really ever touched another atom. And there's a little electrostatic charge around an atom, so they're not actually touching. There's this little electrostatic field. So then, even so, like I think right now my hands are touching, but if I took a high-powered microscope, I could actually see that there's some distance between the two. There's a little electrostatic charge between the two. So the experience of touch is really a repulsion of electromagnetic forces. So now we can then extrapolate that up in scale. So we can take the subatomic, the atomic, now we're up to molecular, and we can say, oh, okay, so no molecule has really ever touched another molecule.
Right. No molecules is touching the receptor, for example. Yeah.
Exactly, of a cell. And so, in the 1950s, when biotech was just entering its heyday, they actually did a lot of head scratching on this. I forgot the name of the problem they called it, some sort of catastrophe. But then they just decided to sweep it under the rug. And 60 years later, they still haven't figured it out, that if I consume something and it's not touching me, how is it affecting me? Well, we now know. We now know that molecule, let's say it's an aspirin, or it's a vitamin. We now know that has a very corresponding specific electromagnetic signature. And that electromagnetic signature has geometry, which any of your listeners are interested, I would highly recommend them go on YouTube and look at something called Cymatics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cymatics, which shows that all of these electromagnetic signatures, these frequencies, have very specific geometry.
Yeah.
And then that geometry is what's actually docking with the receptor.
Yeah. It's funny because sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I brought Candace Pert into my medical school to speak at a conference I'd organized back in 1992. And she mentioned that, she said that exactly what you're saying. And it was such an aha moment for me. And it literally has informed all the work that I've done ever since, that thinking.
Wow.
Yeah, that you can achieve the same effect from the vibratory signature of a molecule as you can from the molecule itself.
Well, and I think from what we're seeing, you can actually get a better effect.
You can get a better effect. It's much easier for the body. Yeah, because you don't have to metabolize it, and then you don't have to eliminate the metabolites. And yeah, it's a much more elegant way. And back to the rainforest, for example, where you're saying you don't have to fertilize a rainforest. I mean, isn't that in a big way how the plants are getting a lot of their nutrients is literally from the energetic signatures in the field?
Well, yeah, they've done some, which I haven't seen much data lately, but it's really interesting. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were some groups that were growing plants in distilled water.
Wow.
Right. So no minerals, no anything. And then they would then test the profile, the biochemical profile of these plants. And through their progression of growth. Now, the content of magnesium, of boron, of specific elements would increase as the plant grew. Now, there was none of it being delivered through water. So where was this coming from?
Yeah.
And they were able to extrapolate very clearly that these plants were getting it from the electromagnetic field, that the genetics, very specific genetics, would resonate with an aspect of that electromagnetic signature, and that electromagnetic signature is in the field, and they would actually take it from the field, which we know our human body's getting the majority of its content already from the field too, but we're just not aware of it. We think we have to get it all from food.
I remember a story you told me a long time ago where you, in your lab, when it used to be up in Sebastopol, and then someone put the THC frequency on the, and projected it into the room, and you came back from dinner and the guy that had done that was just like practically comatose, just totally high, hanging back until you turned it off, right?
Yeah, it was a friend of mine, is a contractor, and he was there working. A group of us were going to dinner, and we have these very, very special speakers that have been developed by one of our extraordinary, as you know him.
Yeah.
He's not many times I'd use the word superhuman, but this being is one of them.
For sure.
And so these speakers can deliver much more than just sound.
Yeah.
And we just kind of really figured out the coordinating signatures, cohering signatures of THC. He was there witnessing this all day while he was doing his work. We had to go to he said, and we know he liked to participate in marijuana. So we said, don't mess with this. And we came back and he was completely out of it and could hardly talk. And he was literally stoned from the electromagnetic signature of the plant.
Wow.
And we turned it off, and then just a little bit later, because since there's no physical substance in you,
Yeah.
there's no really time delay, very little. And then he, 15 minutes later, he was put back. But it was really fascinating to see there's a small group of people and their mouths were agape.
Yeah. And then I know I've heard other stories from one of my doctor friends that went up there that wanted the testosterone signature.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and could really feel it. So anyway, it's incredible. And I think what you were just saying, though, how it ends when you turn it off, so to speak, is just some of the beauty behind the patches also, because you can use a patch that you've developed for sleep, for example, and then in the morning take it off. So sometimes if you're using like nutraceuticals and things like that for helping people sleep, they can have a tiny bit of a hangover, and certainly with pharmaceuticals. But yeah, this way it's gone within about 2 minutes. And I know you guys are working on an energy patch, and that'll be pretty nice to be able to just take it off before you go to bed.
Well, yeah, and then be able to put the sleep patch on, and
Yeah.
really, and to be able to help. And it's really interesting because we have one of our partners has really come on board with us in so many ways, and another really special human lives up in Reno, who I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And he's really wanting us to get away from the word of using the word of patch,
Right.
because something really fascinating is happening that we're starting to observe. So for instance, people say, okay, you're going to have an energy patch, a sleep patch. Of course, we have the focus patch. The pain patch is changing people's lives, as you know, literally changing their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And they're like, okay, well, we're going to become addicted to your patches. And something really interesting happens, and why this gentleman and he's incredibly successful entrepreneur, a really brilliant human.
Yeah.
He says, you guys can't use the word patch, because what happens is that once the body starts being entrained with these patches to receive the information from an electromagnetic signature as consuming the substance, that we don't really know this yet, but we're just anecdotally observing this, that it's starting to be observed that the physiology is starting to change its orientation from needing it from a consumable product to saying, oh, I can just get the electromagnetic signature of it. And then even after some months, they don't even use the patch, let's say on the pain. That's really been observable one so far, because now the body's starting to get it, and it actually resolves the issue.
Yeah. I think, when you have the reduction of the inflammatory cytokines and all of these things, then it allows for the healing to occur that makes it so you don't need the patch anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really becoming exciting that we can begin to use the voice to analyze from electromagnetic signatures. We can use a piece of material to send electromagnetic information to the body, and then soon we're going to be able to, with a set of audio hardware that we've developed, really special set of headphones that deliver what arguably can be called the world's most perfect sound. I mean, people have emotional experiences when they hear music delivered through these headsets. But we're also going to be able to start delivering support to the human body via an app and a set of headphones. And I won't go into too much on that right now, but there's really some fascinating things coming. So we can start to see, when we started this, that a revolution of resonance. And these are just a few examples, but they're important ones. Health, agriculture, information. And then we can start to see that we can use these in things such as water and energy. And I could go on and on. Pretty much everything we're dealing with today.
Right. And so I like I talked about in my book that since we are derived from this field of energy and information, along with every other aspect of creation, it makes sense to let the field be our medicine, and the basic building blocks of the field to be the medicine. And it extends beyond just health applications, but it really moves into how we generate or how we extract our energy, and how we work with natural resources, and how we ameliorate the environmental issues that we're facing right now. So I wonder if we can move into some of those areas.
For sure. So, yeah, one we're also excited about, and we'll have to be a little subdued in sharing the full content and potential of this as it starts to make people like, whoa, can be done. But it's really interesting when we start thinking about how something emerges as mass.
Mhm.
So before something was something,
Mhm.
it was, first it was, ether, and then,
Plasma.
plasma, and then electricity, and
Mhm.
magnetism, and, all these, gravity, and then subatomic particles and hydrogen, and then it became these things.
Mhm.
And so if we imagine that, let's say, like a little piece of, well, something today is very valuable, gold.
Mhm.
So to get a little flake of gold, it has to go through all these processes that we just kind of talked about. It has to go through all these different iterations. And then over, I don't know how many years, but let's just say some odd millions of years, that these very, very, very small particles then become something called monoatomic elements, which, although it should be singular atom, monoatomic, I think they define it really as about 1,000 atom clusters or smaller,
Mhm.
which they really have no mass. You can't do anything with them. Then after time, let's say in a big pile of dirt, that we won't go into all the physics, but there's a phenomena in the field of how plasma operates, which is producing this feedback loop. And this feedback loop is organizing these things into higher states. So after millions of years, these subatomic particles emerge and they become something that has mass. We got a little flake of gold.
Right.
Now, so we can observe that. We can say, oh, wow, if we knew the physics, which of course Nassim and his team have done an extraordinary job of defining this, and then the new paper that's coming out to clearly articulate it, is that there's a very clear phenomena that's happening to allow this stuff to emerge as mass. So instead of taking, let's say, 10 million years to make a little flake, what if we could just emulate that exact same phenomena down into an hour? Not doing it any different, using the same elements, but just taking these elements and putting them in a boundary condition. And now we could take that, what's in that little pound of dirt, which 99.999% of the gold that's there is in this monoatomic state. Then instead of taking this 10 million of years, we could move it into a little flake of gold in minutes.
Right.
Well, I can share that that's now being conducted, and it's in the process of happening right now. And so it's going
That's
to
just going to change the world when you think about rare earths that, and elements that are needed for superconductors and for chips, microchips, and
well,
for
we can remove the word rare.
That's right.
And not only that, do we know that there's pretty much an infinite amount of this now in this monoatomic state that we can move into this diatomic state, but we can take what was left over. So we can go to tailings. We don't have to take, we've done some rough calculations, and they show that we could probably take what's the leftovers of mines today from most everything, whether it's lithium or gold or palladium group metals. And from that, from the tailings with these technologies, there's probably enough materials to provide all the needs on planet Earth for hundreds of years.
Right. And so we could just be done raping the earth. And when you think about the mining technology as it exists today, it's very chemically laden and very, it's not only raping the earth, it's just polluting the earth and the water. I've actually seen this with my patients. I've, had patients coming in that used to eat fish in the streams of Alaska and gold mining territory, and they're super mercury toxic, and they've developed MS and
Yep.
like that. So we can be done with that. We can be done with these kind of like toxic waves of mining minerals and yeah.
Yeah, and the folks that are in those industries right now, or that we're beginning conversations with them, and they're if they can have greater yield and change the way that they're doing things and be good for the planet, they're open to it. And
Good.
so yeah, so it's really it's pretty exciting to see again what type of problems can be resolved, which and understanding the shift to resonance, every problem on planet Earth really can be solved from moving from dissonance to resonance. And so this revolution, I think it's going to start heavily in 2022 with the introduction of some new physics, and 5, 6, 7 companies using these technologies will be in the market, or they'll be starting to license the technology to companies that will then get it to market soon. And so it's coming.
Wow. Can you say anything about energy technologies that are coming and where you see the future in terms of how we're deriving energy from the field to fuel our transportation needs, to build things, to power our homes, to
Yes.
like run small appliances? What do you see happening?
Well, I can't share what's happening right now,
Okay.
but hopefully very soon with your audience will be able to share. What I can share, what I see coming, is that there's people around the world now, not just us, that are understanding that, okay, let's look at where the energy of that atom is coming from, or the energy of the magnet, or even something as simple as wood, that there's a lot of stored energy in wood. I can take a match, light it on fire, and I get a lot of heat. Well, there's stored energy in there. And that's in everything. Where does all of this energy come from? And there's now very clear projects that are working fervently and developing technologies to couple to this field. And I would think in February 22nd, so 2/22/22, I think some really interesting sharing about these technologies will be coming forth then.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time we've actually talked about that date.
I want everyone to be ready for this. It's going to be a day where things change. I think there's going to be the pre 2/22/22 and post 2/22/22.
Yep, for sure. I think it'll be a time where people start looking back and like, okay, this is when humanity began to shift, because there's going to be information presented that allows us to move forward from, oh, is this a theory or is this contemplation, to, okay, here's a fundamental blueprint to how gravity works. And imagine when we're not bound by gravity anymore. A couple of people said, well, that how does that really free us? So imagine that, like, when you literally are not bound to the surface of a planet anymore, you can go up. You don't need a rocket. This is coming. The universe obviously is not bound by, not everything is attached to planet Earth.
I mean, when you think about like the strength of gravity versus electricity, it's a puny force compared.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can take a little magnet and a little ball bearing, put it in, and the ball bearing goes boom, and I just showed that electromagnetism is much stronger than gravity.
Yeah.
So if you're working in resonance with electromagnetism, and so there's going to be some very interesting things coming. And so maybe right now we'll just drop a little tidbit of your viewers to get excited about what's coming. It's not that far in the future, and there'll be many groups of course, that we're talking with right now, very, very quietly, that are putting together a really coordinated introduction of these concepts and things that'll be coming in February of next year. So it's going to be very exciting.
It really is. It really is. I kind of came into this life with an understanding about the energetic nature of reality and the energetic density of the field. It was just a knowing I had, and to now see that we're about to really understand how to work with it and tap into it and work with the forces of nature to to live in harmony with nature is really just the most exciting thing that's ever happened.
Well, it's mandatory.
It is,
For us to not only survive but to prosper, and then when this happens, the rate of the change that will happen, because we've been fortunate, we've been into this almost 2 decades, so it's become sort of benign to us, like, okay, yes. But the majority of people, when they realize the rate of ascension of awareness that can happen by working in resonance, it's going to be stunning.
It is. And it really reminds me of the Nikola Tesla quote: "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." And it's like we're right here, right now. And
it is.
We are just,
yeah. So maybe we leave it with that note that there's a lot of challenges in the world today, whether it's political or health or environmental, and I have more hope at this moment that at any time in history, well, I haven't been here that long, but if I could look back and place myself in any time in history, but at any time in my life, for sure. And that, I think is in physics, we know that there's equilibrium at every scale. So as one thing expands or contracts, you have to have the equal and opposite. So we know that there's this dual toroidal dynamic, and there's this equilibrium that's always happening. And so we could see that in many, whether it's economic, environmental, geopolitical, whatever it is, there's contraction. And I think we can all agree to that. But that also means that there has to be an equal and opposite amount of expansion.
Yeah.
And so the expansive part of the equation has not been seen yet. It's not been brought forth in manifestation where people can go, oh my goodness, here it is. Yeah. But it's coming.
Yeah. And it's like the swing.
Hold on.
I know. Hold on. Yeah. Like it's just that pendulum is so far off on the contractive side that it's like, boom, it's going to come on.
It's going to swing back big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool times. Okay. Thank you so much. This was great. It was so good to talk with you.
Oh yeah, Beth, thanks for your time. And I always look forward to connecting with you, and we'll talk in the future.
Okay.